Okay. And the magic machine tells me that I'm live. And here I am with my literal Generation 1 iPods. I, whatever you call these things. Earbuds. I think there was like a special name for these things. Golden Coin 100, first in the live chat. Gonna be doing something different today. Golden Coin 100, feel free to let me know if you can hear me. There's something about me being paranoid about the fact that these were things for my phone from 2012 that makes me concerned that it's going to interfere with the audio. So I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. Normally, I've been doing these epic marathon live streams um, to see if we can break through the algorithm and to see if it helps. I'm going to be attacking a J.Scott Garibay video, using that word metaphorically, one at a time here, just addressing one video, uh, tight and sweet, so that we only end up with a 2.5 hour video. If I don't address the live chat, it's not because I'm trying to be rude. It's just because I'm trying to get through this. And I want to thank Golden Coin 100 for not letting me know if they can hear me. Thanks, buddy. You are first in the live chat, but you are not letting me know if you can hear me. So I'm just going to assume that we can. You know what, actually? Remember back in the day, I would go over to, hold on, what's this? View on YouTube. Watch this. There you go. There you go. The old school audio check. He was Golden Coin 100. You were just too busy making sure you got that gold coin on Twitch. I don't blame you. I don't blame you. Here, look. Let me go over. Now I got to go because I shut down the wrong window. Let me go over to the video that I'm going to be responding to. Blah, blah, blah. Here we go. And what I'm going to try and do for our boy J.Scott Garibay, who we love. I just also want to take this time to give a shout out to DM Bloodworth over at Unscripted and Unchained RPG Reviews, who was nice enough to host. Oh, that volume just like shot through my earphones right there. Hopefully, the volume that I got to play it at will be good enough for you to hear it at. Sounds like a dream. Thank you. There you go, baby. I love you, man. Um, let's see what's going on. I'm going to share the vid here. And what I'm going to do here is my response to J.Scott Garibay, just to catch you guys all up to speed, is of course we know that J.Scott Garibay is a very unique take on things. Dan Bloodworth hosted me over at Unscripted and Unchained RPG Reviews. We had a wonderful, wonderful long conversation. And at the end of that, he shares his experience with J.Scott Garibay as a player at his table for a 4 hour playthrough of a one shot of my favorite game, Shadow Dark. And it's great to hear the DM's perspective, the DM side of the story, because J.Scott Garibay made 12 videos about his experience at that table. And to say that there's a difference of opinion or perspective on that encounter would be an understatement. So check out Unscripted Unchained RPG Reviews. It's well worth a subscribing in its own right, and then you'll also get your boy sit down for an interview. We had a great, wonderful time, great, wonderful conversation. But now listen, J.Scott Garibay has an attitude about player characters, and if you want to play armchair psychiatrist and psychologist like we have been doing, there's plenty to dig in here. And the reason why I want to talk about this too is because I can relate to a lot of these things. Hey, I self-identify as neurodivergent, not only because I self-identify as that, because I have diagnoses. You know what I mean? There's no shame in that. OCD, hoarding, there's things that can lead to these things. J.Scott Garibay thinks that when a player character dies, there's a lot of over-identification between J.Scott Garibay as a TTRPG player and the player characters that we often know die. And in games, we roll up characters. We can have characters that live for campaigns. We have characters that can live through several campaigns. And we have characters that can live but for moments. Accepting mortality in life is part of life. And I have heard it said that one of the things that we can get out of TTRPGs is a quasi first encounter with letting go and encounters with mortality in some cases, but small m mortality. Playing a game like Dark Souls, where you lose experience points. You don't get to just retain them. You don't get to just instantly restart where you last died. There are consequences for death. Can be a small m encounter with mortality, which can be a prep for the big M mortality. And there's also this Buddhist teaching. All possessions are fleeting. I have an overattachment to things that I deal with and have learned how to deal with. People in my family have had problems with hoarding, and I have to make sure that my overaccumulation of stuff doesn't tip over into hoarding. One of the things that I've talked about with mental health professionals and we've encountered and talked about deconstructing, and I've learned to deconstruct, is the holding on to things, especially things that look like people and things that look like cute things, like stuffed animals, anthropomorphic things. As a guy that can have a hard enough time getting rid of, oh, I never know, we could reuse that, or I might use that for that. It might just be the packaging from an action figure, but I could use it for a collage, or it could be used for an action. These are the things that can lead to hoarding, but especially when I can look at something and feel like it looks like a thing that might have feelings, even though essentially and realistically I know that it's an inanimate object that doesn't have feelings. Or if it's a thing that was attached to my childhood or the childhood of my children, I can feel guilty throwing things away because it's not even a piece of art that my children had an overly attachment to. It's not their kindergarten project that they got a gold star or an award for. It's just some piece of paper that they just absentmindedly painted on. But if I throw that away, what does that say about me as a parent? Right? Am I a bad parent? That was something that they did at this day and whatever, and it's part of their 4.5-year-old experience and this. And so I can identify, but people have had to say, it will break apart. And if we hold on to all these things, we will be overwhelmed by all these things. So this video that he's made, A Memory I Keep for You, he's going to talk about his feelings about seeing player characters die. And he's going to give us some insight into how he feels about player characters die. Characters die in RPGs all the time. And most RPGs, TTRPGs say, like in Mothership or in Jason Tashi's, I think is I'm pronouncing the name correctly, 240024XX styles of games. It says it explicitly, and in Troika it says it explicitly. When a player character dies, the player rolls up a new character as the other players fight over the corpse and the possessions of the corpse of the other person. They roll up a new character and enter the uh, situation immediately. Favor fun of the table over, you know, narrative. Just throw them in there, get them in there. We move on. And Seth Sirkowski of I love Big Black Dick, YouTube.com, was criticized by J.Scott Garibay for saying the same. Have players have backup characters, and this activated um, J.Scott Garibay. That was terrible, and that essentially J.Scott Garibay put forward the thought that when a player characters die, the table should stop and everybody should like essentially hold like a Kaddish, right? They should all sit Shiva for the player character that died, as if the player character was a real person. I'm not a mental health professional, but I know enough about mental health as a patient to know that that is pathological. And that's only going to lead to pain because player characters die. And people die. And toys get broken. And children outlive stuffed animals. And stuffed animals get ripped. And they don't always need to be patched up and repaired. And sometimes the appropriate things to do with a Star Wars action figure that got chewed up, its feet got chewed up by a dog, is not to hold on to it because you can saw the feet off and it can be an amputee Star Wars guy in a hospital, is just to accept that it doesn't need to be refurbished. You don't need to wait to see if there's an aftermarket price point at which holding on to it makes sense. You can just throw it away. Let's watch the video together. I hope you can hear him as good as I do, because I don't want to deafen myself.
Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about something I recently encountered. And let's go ahead and
Fair use, fair use, fair use. The purpose of this video is to talk about the subjects that he's talking about, to create a transformative work, to create a dialogue, and to maybe communicate to J. Scott Garibay. Everything, this too shall pass. Attachment leads to suffering. Attachment leads to suffering.
dive in, and I'm going to start to explain it. So I was making my way in my Earth-based primary quest, right? And so I'm in my Earth-based primary quest, and I come across
Bear in mind that he's a father, he's a husband, he has a job, and he's a member of a congregation, right? He's a friend.
and I start to make my way through a language forest, right? And there's just a bunch of bog standard trees. But then as I'm making my way through this language forest, I encountered a glade, this beautiful glade. Now, what was this glade in this language forest? It was a phrase, and I'm going to give it to you right now. And the phrase was, a memory I keep for you. And I was like, whoa, what? What did you? And I was like, wait a second. I'm just in a box standard language forest. There's an oak, there's an ash, there's a spruce, right? But then I come around this corner, and there's this beautiful glade, a memory I keep for you, right? And I immediately stopped, and I took out
That's like a searchable phrase. Like when I'm done, I'm gonna definitely put in like into Chat GPT, and it's gonna find it for us. A memory I keep for you.
my notebook and I wrote it down, right? Because I needed to remember it, right? And the reason why was this video. And what I want to talk about right now is as Dragon Masters, X
That means player characters. In his lexicon, a player character in Dungeons, Dragons, and TTRPGs is referred to as a Dragon Master.
executing a memory I keep for you. Okay, so Dungeon Masters build the world. Okay, Dragon Masters bring that world to life. Okay, they're a Dungeon Master's world has zero meaning without the catalyst, without the purpose established by the Dragon Masters, the players, right? And so basically, Dragon Masters go about their time at the Dungeons and Dragons table, and they witness the narrative. They witness the narrative that the Dungeon Master is creating. Excuse me, and they witness the narrative that the other Dragon Masters are creating, and they witness the interruptions, the divergences, and the parameterization of the math rocks, right? And I've been thinking a lot. I I've been thinking a lot about player character death. It's a main theme in it's a main theme in my thought patterns recently, right? Player character death, and I've been incredibly fortunate. The beginning from December to January to March, I went to three different conventions. I went to PAX Unplugged, I went to Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, and I went to um, EcclesiaCon. Okay, so all
So DM Bloodworth told the story from, I think, PAX Unplugged, and he has a story that he knows the person that DM'd the game where J.Scott Garibay had a similar extraordinary encounter with a DM at EcclesiaCon.
three I saw Dungeons and Dragons played, right? And at Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo and at
I think that was the one where DM Bloodworth was.
EcclesiaCon, I saw something that was truly horrific to me, right?
DM Bloodworth tells the story at the end of our interview. It's classic. You got to see it.
And it was
And this video may have been this J. Scott Garaby's video today may have been triggered by our discussion yesterday, which means he may have made this video. He may have gotten into his car last night after we ended our interview at, like, you know, I don't know what it was, like maybe 10:30, 11. Or, it may be the case that J. Scott Garibay records videos and just like backlogs them and then uploads them as he feels that they're necessary.
was the the dead player character, the player character Death Wall. They had it at Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, and they had it at EcclesiaCon. And of course, it's just meant to be fun, right? Which of course terrifies Scott Garibay. I don't like Dungeons and Dragons being used for fun, and this is one of the reasons why, right? And so basically,
That tells you something too. You know what I mean?
both of these are quite traumatic for me to see these walls, and what they
Traumatic, right? It's this over. It's like this is this is a hobby. These are games. When you start being traumatized by the experience, the normative experience of player character death, the normal when things that other people are experiencing as normal to you is traumatic, it's not that there's something wrong with you. It's not that you're doing something bad. It's that there's something that you need to check in with someone else, someone professional about.
were
That's my suggestion.
was they were people are playing Dungeons and Dragons, and everything we did for the first 50 years was so completely wrong, and now
Everything we did for 50 years was so completely wrong. It's just, then why were we doing it? And like,
we're starting to realize it, right? So
we're starting to realize it, or are you starting to realize it? If you have an idea for a new way to play TTRPGs, okay. But I don't. It's like it might be start to look a little bit like a cult where player characters are real people, and player characters can come back and visit people like a ghost, and player characters are real. But I got to tell you, like other things, other belief systems that have led to things that are like cults, it could be a dangerous thing.
So so where we landed, right, is we first of all we tell people, oh, it's a convention game, right? So you don't have much time to do these things, right? But then, um, and then they'll say, well, this is a one shot, right? Now I despise those. I don't believe in the term one shot. Basically, you sit down at the table and an adventure is told, right? That doesn't mean that isn't the start of a campaign, right? Anyone in that.
I mean, this has got to be a director. He has got to have made this video last night in his car. He saw my interview. He saw me and Dean Bloodworth talking, and then we said our discussion about J.Scott Garibay and his experience with Dean Bloodworth happened at the end of our discussion, which I guarantee you, closeted ended at like 11 o'clock. This guy, J. Scott Garibay, had to have gotten into his car. There's no way that it didn't happen this way. Had to have gotten into his car at 11 o'clock and started driving around the suburbs of South Philly and made this video. Meanwhile, if you showed up in the live chat, Dean Bloodworth would have given him a link.
On that table may pick up. I'm not saying they should. I'm saying this can happen based on, and one of the reasons why is right now there is no established ownership structure for any of the narratives that are being told with Dungeons and Dragons. There are literally no contracts in the world, no laws that have been written to establish ownership of any story told with Dungeons and Dragons. Right?
That's 100% not true. You have Critical Role, but even before Critical Role, going back to the 80s, in Japan, they print up these books called what are they called? They're they like people watch Let's Plays, like videos. They've been doing that for years, like with their TRPGs. It's like they print up the playthroughs like deposition transcripts, and people read them like light novels. The majority, like a huge portion of their TRPG like publishing, economy is these I wish I had a Japanese TRPG here. Uh it's these like table talk, playthroughs. I'm having trouble with word finding today. So obviously there's contracts. In fact, they're one of the first native JRPG Japanese RPG products was Record of Lodos War, which was literally a couple of the authors' D&D campaign, original basic D&D campaign that they turned into a a narrative that they transcribed and they turned into a narrative, and then that got turned into a manga and an anime. So yeah, and people, have taken their campaigns and turned them into adventure modules. So I mean, it's just not true, bro.
We are literally in the frontier land with this, right? And so any one of those people could pick up that story and go from Dragon Master to Dungeon Master. I'm not saying they should. I'm not even saying they have a right to. I'm saying this is happening, right?
And it can happen. Look, dude, you can play Superman at your table, and DC can't do anything about it. You hear of fanfic, as long as it's called fair use. If you don't do something for profit, and also it's like if you make an adventure campaign about this and the other thing, I mean, and if someone doesn't use your proprietary language, if someone doesn't, I mean, the SRD, I mean, like it's just, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not trying to refute you. I'm just trying to show you that it's okay.
And they can move forward and create, like, just because you declare as a dungeon master a one shot, that doesn't mean it's going to be a one shot. You may continue that. You may have a player reach out to you and say, I would like to continue that. Or you may have a dragon master say, I'm going to become the dungeon master and pick up that story from here, right?
But regardless, when they refer to a one shot, it means that we don't intend this to be a campaign. You're at a convention. You're sitting down. The adventure that DM Bloodworth was running that night was a scenario that was intended to resolve within 3 or 4 hours. The party was going to start at location A, proceed, and hopefully arrive at Big Bad, within 3 or 4 hours, and maybe get back to the village. That would be the one shot. The whole situation would resolve in one 3 or 4 hour session. A campaign is a series of those adventures linked together. This is not new language. What the hell am I doing?
Or you may even have a Dragon Master say, I played this at a convention. I want to continue to play that, and then go get their own Dungeon Master to continue it, right? So
Yeah.
one shot is meaningless, and it's only used by fools. Okay.
Only used by fools. Okay. Monty Cook, Frank Menser. I wonder if Gary Gygax ever used the term one shot. I wonder if that fool, Steve Jackson, ever used the term one shot. Either one. American British. I wonder if Sandy Peterson ever used the term one shot. Is Professor DM on record as ever using the term one shot? I'd be interested to know.
Okay. So, but what blew me away was people were playing Dungeons and Dragons, and then when their player character was killed, they would take the player character and go tack them up on this death wall, right? And this astounded me. And there was always like, and there's like a little bit of a celebration, or people would laugh, and right, and people would come by and look at the wall, and it was terrifying to me because I don't understand it, right?
It was terrifying to you. I can relate. I can understand. And what I want, if J.Scott Garibay sees this video and watches, is that I want you to understand that I understand. Because I have had similar feelings. I have held on to broken toys, broken action figures, ruined tchotchkes that were either owned by me or owned by my kids or owned by my little brother, scribbles of people. Because if I throw that away, that's the one more last piece of that person or that individual. There's only X amount of pieces of that individual, but everything goes away.
And the reason why is every single player character I ever play goes onto my identity stack. So I would never give a player character that I had played, whether they were pre-generated or whether I had generated them.
But bear in mind, a pre-generated character doesn't belong to you. A pre-generated character probably comes from a ready-made resource that went out to here, there, and everywhere,
Away. I would never put it somewhere where I didn't know its fate. So I have.
You didn't know its fate. That's over attachment. You're holding on too hard. You need to talk to someone about this, or else you're going to experience so much pain and anxiety. Death, decay, destruction is inevitable. They're not ensouled. They're pieces of paper. They're imaginary characters. You roll 3d6 down the line and they die. No one has died. They're a figment of your imagination. They're not part of your identity stack. You have one core identity. And if you start to fragment into these identity stacks, you're playing with your mind. You're driving yourself crazy. It's not a good thing. It's black magic.
So I have the player characters that I played, right? I have the player character sheets for them, and I would never do this, even especially if a player character died, right? I would just tack it on a wall where somebody could take it, or at the end of the convention, it might just be thrown out. Right?
Why not? One of the techniques that people with these sort of feelings will be walked through gently. You don't just grab, if you see J.Scott Garibay, if someone like is experiencing things like J.Scott Garibay is describing, do not just grab the piece of paper and tear it up or light it on fire or steal it or steal it and then wipe your butt with it or do anything like that with it. Don't threaten to do that. But when J.Scott Garibay is ready, a qualified mental health coach, a qualified professional, will start with the latest, least experienced, or just generate a new player character with him on an index card, maybe a basic, an OD&D. Okay, we're going to put a name on top of the sheet. Let's call this guy Joe Smith. And what is it? Strength, dexterity, you know what I mean? The whole, down the line. 3D6, we generate them, we put down the provisions, right? It's an index card. And then okay, we don't need to rip it up, but what we're going to do, we're going to just throw it in the garbage can. Let's just practice. You throw it in the garbage can. We're not going to take it out of the garbage can. No, we're leaving it there. Okay. You got to take it out. You got to take it out. You got to take it out. Okay. How long can we leave it there? Right?
Right? Like I would never allow the talisman of an element of my identity stack to go anywhere that I didn't know what was going to happen to it. Right?
You'll never know what's going to happen to it. And it doesn't matter. Those sort of feelings are hard enough to deal with if someone kidnaps your child or if mom goes missing, right? You can't invest pieces of paper with that sort of power. You're going to drive yourself crazy.
And so basically, I realized every single, and there were dozens of these characters, every single person at Philadelphia Gaming Expo and at EcclesiaCon that was tacking their player character to the wall, basically, they were incapable of keeping the memory of that character's death in any meaningful way.
They don't need to, they don't care. You know why? They have a normative, healthy relationship between themselves and those imaginary characters. They know that the gaming experience is an experience that they had, and those PCs were not part of them. They were tools that they used to experience the gaming world. This is like magical thinking. People of who come from societies where they didn't have the technology of photographs don't take my picture because they thought that it would steal their soul. They did not understand and appreciate that it was just a visual representation caught in plasma and film chemicals. It wasn't them. And if someone took their picture and burnt it, that magical process only had as enough impact and power as they emotionally invested in it. And if someone were to break those magical thoughts and feelings, the voodoo priest has no control over you. Okay? The voodoo priest has put a psychological whammy on you by, you know what I mean, freaking you out and making you think that he does. Okay? He put the whammy on you. He put the Jedi mind trick on you. It's psychological deception, all this stuff, and enculturated stuff. It's not. You're not going to get hurt if they break the shell with your name written inside it or whatever. But that stuff, that magical thinking, takes place because neuroses, psychoses, anxieties have been with our brain since our brains have been our brains, and our brains have been our brains since before we had written language. Let it go. You're not the PC. They don't need a memory. They have the memory inside them, and their memory too will go. We're all just one head injury away from being a completely different person.
Right? And so what astounded me is I realized then I was like, oh my gosh, a memory I keep for you, right? So as Dragon Masters, we need to start, being present at the table and realizing, okay, we are building our own memories, right? We're keeping our player characters. We're adding these player characters to our identity stack. we're pouring ourselves into these vessels, pouring these vessels back into ourselves, right? And
I advise anyone, at one point on this channel, I was developing a kind of quasi magical, spiritual um, TTRPG, halfway between the game, halfway between real life, chrono magic is real system. And I stopped doing that. You know why? I stopped doing drugs. There's a direct correlation between my willingness to experiment with magical practices and my use of drugs. And there's a direct correlation between my use of drugs and my experiencing of psychosis and psychosis like symptomology. Life is good enough itself without playing with your brain.
we're doing that, right? But one of the things I realized is that's not enough, right? We need to reach this point of a memory I keep for you. So every single one of these people, right, we're not capable of keeping the memory. We're not willing to keep the memory, right?
Thank God.
So we need to keep the memory for them. And why? For the sake of the player character, right? It's like a pet. It's not a. It's similar. It's similar. There is some overlap and there's some difference and there's some variation. But I think this is a good analogy. It's not 100% accurate. It's not 100% overlay. It is accurate, but there is some parts that go. It's not a. If you were to look at these two things from above, there'd be some overlap on the edges.
There's no overlap on the edges. A pet is a living thing that experiences pain, is capable of giving you real world comfort. A player character is an imaginary entity. Okay? There is no real overlap. And if you're experiencing overlap, you need to talk to a qualified mental health professional. In my humble opinion, and in the opinion of many other people, I presume.
Okay, but it's like a pet who has a terrible wound, right? Like if you saw a dog that was abused, wouldn't there be a point where you'd be like, I might take that pet, right? Like, yeah, right?
Yeah,
So basically,
absolutely.
this is what I'm saying is anyone who would ever do this with a player character is not capable or willing to keep these memories, right?
But what are you going to do? Take everyone's player character? You'll drive yourself crazy if you keep on thinking this way. Your soul will break trying to hold on to all this pain with this belief. It's an impossible belief to maintain without your heart breaking in 1,000 different pieces, Jay. Think of all the players, and I'm not doing this to put a whammy on you or to cast a spell on you to make you hurt. Think of all the players of all the TTRPGs and all their player characters that die and then they throw away because they don't feel this way. Because feeling this way is not, it's when I say not normal, I don't mean it in a judgmental way. It's not healthy. It's not what we're supposed to do. Because if this is what we felt, TTRPGs would be a bad thing. Because TTRPGs would be a poison pill that would cause all of their players to go crazy with pain. We would only play like walking simulations because our player characters would be who would do this? Who would put their players in harm's way?
But you and I can, right? A memory I keep for you, right? Now, why are we going to keep it for that person if they're not capable or willing of keeping the memory? Well, they may change, right? And we also may circle back to them, or we may change them into a person that's worthy of receiving that player character back. You're like, well, at a convention, I'm probably never going to see that person again. Possible, but possibly not, right? And we really need to start thinking about the care and feeding and preservation of player characters, right?
Player characters don't feed. They don't eat, dude. Man, you're breaking my heart, bro.
And I think as Dragon Masters, we need to take this very seriously. A memory I keep for you because you're not capable of keeping a memory or you're not willing to keep a memory. But the player character deserves better than you. And where you failed, I will pick up the slack. Every single
I love you, man. I love you so much, brother. I don't want you to feel pain, man.
word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic.
Yep.
Please consider like and subscribing and have a fetch millennium.
We love you, J.Scott Garibay, man. You're a homie. Okay. I gotta run. 24 guy. Well, okay, here we go. I gotta zoom through the comments. Gerald M. Yates. Here we go. Oh, no, no, no. Let me do this. There you go. Here we go. Let me go to the top and I'll rock out to the bottom. Golden Coin 100 first in the live chat. Austin Wyatt, we're back again. I do one video. I cover one video. It turns into a 41-minute video, of course. Golden Coin, there you go. Unscripted and Unchained RPG review. Hey, wish I could join in, but I have workers sanding my floor. It sounds like a giant swarm of bees. Chegs Chambers, greetings from Wales. Am I too late for JSG's acoustic drives? Not, no way. You're right on time. Second on Twitch, bronze medal on to silver medal on today. Jonaside, hey, hey, working, driving, and listening. We got Soul Architect, Arkwright, whatever it is. This is really good insight with the connection to hoarding. I've been wondering why Jay has such a hard time coping with character death. Gerald M. Yates giving me two great praise. Pope Benjamin, I'm in the running. I know there's a lot of heat behind Donald Trump's confirmation, but fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. I've got my red hat waiting. High School Confidential. There you go. Martha Stewart is destined to be a vegetarian. Oh, Cheggs Chambers. It occurred to me while watching last night's stream with Unscripted Unchained RPG. What we're viewing might be an example of someone who's been triggered by a TTRPG. Hadrian72, daytime stream. Hope this doesn't tank my work productivity. We're keeping it tight. We're trying to keep it tight. So hopefully we'll get you out of there. 100% a response to you and you. Definitely. The end of muscular dystrophy. We got Tim Frey with us. His way of playing TTRPGs is no character death. Now we understand why. Jonaside. I never really be sad about a character dying. I'm more upset about the characters that just are left in limbo because that campaign ended for whatever reason, right? I feel ya. I feel ya. Tim Frey, I had a character die, but took him to another group so he could live, then realized I was cheating and just quit for a few years. J.Scott, Night Driving, Unscripted and Unchained reviews. Again, I always let my players at conventions keep their character sheets pre-gens or created at the table. I make new pre-gens for each convention. Yeah, we don't know. I heard this. I've heard this from multiple people. We don't know what J.Scott, Garibay would do if he encountered one of these. I've heard this. I haven't heard this in a while, but old school guys, old school DMs, I've heard about this from multiple people. I've heard about this sort of DM. Your character dies, and the DM goes, your character died. Hand it over. You ever hear about these guys? Hand it over, right? Anyone ever encountered one of the, I've never encountered one of those guys, but I've heard about them. Your character dies, the DM is like, hand it over, hand it over. I've heard stories about people being like, fuck you, I'm not doing it. I heard one story where that was the rule of the table, and one dude was like, fuck you, I'm not handing it over. And the DM was like, handing it over. And the guy was like, fuck you, no, I'm not. And the DM looked at two other people, like two other players at the table. They held the dude down. And the DM took the player character, ripped it up, threw it in the dude's face. Like apparently it was like a riot. There you go. Yeah, I hear you. But there's definitely some sort of diagnosis going on there unscripted, right? Chrono Magic is real. There you go. Long live CW. I appreciate it. Oh, Saul says I had a long convo with Jay yesterday. Felt like I was almost getting somewhere. Then he just called me a shadow account and threw it all out once again. That's how it happens. Anyway, folks, I love you. I love you. I love you. If nobody told me they loved you today, someone just did. Why am I doing this? You know what I mean? My brain goes out the window. Instead of I'm gonna get a 45. So I do just one video. I do just one video reviewed, 45 minutes. Unbelievable. What do we got? I'm gonna honor it. Technically, yeah, I gotta be on. Oh no, no, no! It was right out. Okay, there you go. 6 of coins. That's beautiful. Charity, keeping it balanced. Of the earth, keeping it balanced. Sharing the wealth. Sharing the wealth. Sharing knowledge and experience. Trying to do my best. And speaking of it, I gotta be true to my word. Keeping my eye on the clock. I gotta shut it down. But we'll see if this performs better. The videos have been performing well, but we'll see if keeping it tight, under 3 hours makes it perform a little bit better. Until next time, love y'all. No one told they loved it today. Someone just did. The guy who's not scared. Player character death. Let it go. We're all going to go someday. Might as well start the player characters.